local developer responsibility. So in the background study, in the appendix, there's a detailed section on local service policies, which identifies what capital works are responsibility of the local developer, and then what additional costs would be considered development charge eligible. So that has been identified. Generally, developer is responsible for water and wastewater connections to trunk mains and pumping stations to service specific areas. Stormwater management, quality and quantity works, including downstream or adjacent erosion works, are also a local service. Internal roads, sidewalks, streetlights, and private entrances are also considered internal to the development. This slide here is just a simple slide to identify the relationship between growth, service, and funding. So if you look at the top circle here, it identifies the initial trigger for new capital is identified residential and non-residential growth to service new users. That growth can either be funded through tax rates on the right, water and sewer rates, reserves, etc., or it can be funded through development charges. So it's just, the point of this graph is to show that there's a fairly simple model that's in place, financial model for municipalities to work with the service and fund and ultimately finance development. So any decisions you make on one end will have an implication on the other. So if you decide to, say, reduce the development charges, for example, then that's going to ultimately have an impact on the tax base. This table here summarizes the growth forecast that was used to prepare the DC background study, and ultimately one of the key components of the DC calculation. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a 10-year, 20-year, and build-out forecast for water and sewer. The 10-year forecast identifies a net population increase of just over 1,500 persons, and that's a unit increase of about 929 units over that 10-year period. So just about 93 units a year. The 20-year period identifies a forecast of about 3,600 new population, and that translates into a unit increase of about 1,900, or about 96 units a year. And then the last two columns here identify for residential the ultimate build-out forecast for water and wastewater. So this looks at the ultimate capacity of water and sewer, on the first column, capacity of water, and on the second column, capacity of sewer in residential unit equivalents, including an assumption for an allocation to non-residential as well. And so, also we have a non-residential forecast, which has been identified in gross floor area. So we have an employment forecast that gets translated into a gross floor area forecast based on an assumption of the amount of average square feet per employee. We've identified an increase of 245,000 square feet over the 10-year period, 573,000 over the 20-year period, and then the bill for water and sewer is 595,500 square feet. This graph here just summarizes the overall housing forecast over the 20-year period in relation to historical building permit activity. Historically, you've been averaging about 80 units a year. As you can see, the average has come down over the last few years. We've had, obviously, a slowdown in the economy, and just about everywhere we look, the amount of development activity in residential has fallen. But we are seeing, in some cases, a gradual rebound in building permit activity in southwestern Ontario, but we do expect that it will be a rather slow recovery. So we've identified a gradual stepping up of development over time, looking at a long-term average of about, as I said, about 96 units a year. I have identified a small additional amount of residential growth identified for seasonal development. Obviously, many communities such as Grand Bend are attracting seasonal development. We've been fairly conservative on that approach because it is obviously difficult to forecast seasonal development. We didn't want to overestimate. A lot of those seasonal units are in many cases, converting from seasonal to permanent and back and forth, so it's hard sometimes to monitor exactly what that occupancy status is. So we've been fairly conservative, but we have included a small provision for seasonal in the forecast moving forward. This slide just summarizes the overall services that we have included and ultimately calculated the DC for. Those services that are municipal-wide include roads and related, fire protection services, municipal parking spaces, indoor recreation services, outdoor recreation services, indoor recreation services, library, administration studies, and then our water and wastewater services are our area-specific services for fully serviced communities. This slide here, I know it's a little busy and hard to read. It just basically summarizes the proposed DCs for residential and non-residential for residential by service and by unit type. It identifies a overall charge for municipal-wide services of about $2,800 per single detached unit, and then that varies by unit type. It identified additional charges of approximately $8,250 for water and sewer, and again that varies by residential unit type. The singles being charged the most, and small apartments having the lesser charge. So the grand total charge for single detached units with water and sewer is, I'll propose just over $11,000. For non-residential development, there are a number of categories, including wind turbines, agricultural processing, greenhouse development, commercial, institutional, and industrial. The charge for wind turbines is on a per wind turbine basis, averaging just over $1,500 per turbine. For agricultural processing, the charge is calculated on a per meter basis of $39 per square meter. Greenhouses are being charged at an overall rate of $52.31 per meter. Commercial and institutional at $71.26 per meter, and then industrial at $35.63 per meter. This slide here provides a comparison of your proposed DC charges for residential in comparison to your current charge. So you can see here on the left column, your current charge for residential, including water and wastewater, is just under $10,000 per unit. As I mentioned, the calculated charge is just over $11,000. We're proposing to phase that rate in over time, over a period of 5 phase-in periods, to ultimately get the charge to the calculated rate, starting at the current rate of $10,000 and then gradually moving up over time to $11,019. And you can see here the only charge that is actually changing in this phase-in schedule is the water charge. All the local service charges are set at the $27.70. Wastewater is set at $22.95. It's the water services that are being phased in, given the significant increase in capital costs associated with water treatment. This provides a similar chart for the non-residential to compare your current charge to calculated. Again, we're also proposing a phase-in for the non-residential charge as well. This would be for commercial and institutional users per square meter. The current charge is at $59.24 per square meter. As I mentioned, the calculated charge is at $71.26, and we're proposing to phase that charge in over time, ultimately to the $71.26. Again, the water charge being the only charge within this table, within the calculation that's actually changing over time, again, due to the costs associated with water treatment. This chart here provides a similar comparison for your industrial DC, proposed DC per square meter. If you look to the bottom of this table, you'll see, if you can read that,